Daily dirt block check.
Uh-oh, here we go. Guess I gotta grab my dirt blocks. Here in Dirt Civilization, only one thing matters. How much dirt you have.
30 dirt blocks, please. Make it quick.
I have 30, look. Every morning, the dirt government takes 30 dirt blocks. If you don't have it, you have to do extra work for the day.
What you just watched was a 16-second excerpt from the video, Minecraft, but I joined a civilization war, full movie. Directed and produced by Joel and Conk, the minds behind other hits, such as Minecraft, but it's the end of crouching full movie. It's something of a dream of mine to work with them someday, as I really admire their work. There is genuinely not an ounce of irony behind that statement. I find their creations to be mesmerizing in a way I can't explain. At least I haven't been able to up till now. In this video, I'm setting out to try. Hi again, guys, and it's time to have a long overdue discussion about brain rot. It's a buzzword that gets thrown around a lot, and I'm sure it applies to a lot of different things from person to person, but there's a sentiment in a lot of comment sections on TikTok that I built this For You page brick by brick. You see, TikTok's FYP is perhaps one of the most finely tuned algorithms in the world. It can predict what you will keep scrolling on the app for indefinitely to near perfection. And since it's able to read people so well, some people have decided to own the identity that the algorithm reflects on them in the form of the sludge fed to them based on what they like. This occurs either in ignorance or perhaps in spite of the ever-looming specter of a computer's ability to predict exactly what you will find engaging. I'll be dissecting that idea further in this video, and if you enjoy, this card at the end will take you to me trying to wade my way through the muck in order to find meaning in the chaos of Instagram Reels. Also, did you know less than 20% of y'all are subscribed with notifications on? If you sub and hit that bell icon, you'll never miss an upload, and you can always undo it later. Alright, I think we need to work backwards here. Brain rot on the surface implies something that makes no sense, right? Well, that is only in the view of the layman. Everything labeled brain rot ties back to something somewhere. Like, I first found that Civilization full movie cut up into parts while scrolling TikTok. I'd never heard of it before, but I genuinely went to the account that was freebooting that content because I was hankering for that next part. That was until there wasn't a next part posted to watch anymore. Eventually, I realized that this had to be part of a longer form series, which brought me to searching for the full upload. And it showed me that this was an entire storyline with some genuinely funny writing. It was presented in such a way that put me in a fugue state. I was unable to look away. And to give an example you might be more familiar with, do you all remember that gat for gat phenomenon? God, I hate saying that word. No judgment if you use it, I just don't think it's right coming out of my mouth.
We can go get for got, fuck that, we can go rich for a raise. Slam some bucks for the .com. Double pump with the phantom text. I get the ore, the symbol, the big man, maybe she's like a raise. Not to the point that I don't even got, I'm putting in the shop that I don't even.
All over Twitter, people were posting videos of them scrolling TikTok and getting these different characters doing this literal song and dance. And the amount of steps removed to get where we are today is insane. See, the original song is Band for Band by Central C featuring Lil Baby, a UK and US rapper respectively. It was a track that was supposed to unite both sides of the Atlantic together musically. They literally went back and forth saying, we can go band for band, fuck that, we can go M for N. But people, instead of taking this as a sign of unity, thought the difference in the deliveries between an American and British artist was really funny. So these videos of people swapping personalities when the different artists said their lines on the chorus is what initially went viral. This one in particular being the most iconic. If this motion he's doing looks familiar, that's because this video was the basis on which every other video after had the skin of cartoon characters, Twitch streamers, war criminals, and every other class of humanoid painfully grafted onto it. This type of trend was only really possible at the advent of not just AI voice, but also AI video. We're putting characters into motion has never been easier. I even made myself doing the Kevin Gates emote to prove that it's easier than ever. But the final piece of this puzzle is the so-called brain rot remix of the original Band for Band song, where every word possible that could get replaced by a buzzword of what some people call Gen Z slang, and it's debatable if that label is even appropriate, got replaced. But nevertheless, the umbrella of what most people see as brain rot is this subset of words in supposedly new age lingo, like Livy Dunn, Baby Drunk, Riz. It sounds like nonsense, right? But much of what could be counted under brain rot is collected in the very controversial wiki page for List of Generation Z slang, with such notes as, this article possibly contains original research. Some of this article's listed sources may not be reliable. Regardless, it has become a persistent trend of the day to replace the lyrics of songs with these brain rot words in nonsense ways. People will also, jokingly or not, include them into conversations that would be incomprehensible even just a year ago. It's emblematic to the nature of how quickly the world moves these days.
Baby Grunk? Baby Grunk, is that you?
No, I'm Quandale Dingle, Baby Grunk.
Grittied off to Ohio.
I know that's Cap.
Fine, you got me. What do you want?
Please,
To
just...
jelk my Drake strings again? Make me a munch just so you can bust right into my pants? That edge has already gooned.
Please, just... What are you drinking?
Boy, it's just alcohol.
Baby Gronk.
Okay, do you finally see what I mean? I could pseudo-intellectualize this all day, but without an example clearly showing what I'm talking about, it really wouldn't make sense. Among these list of commonly used terms is phantom tax. It's a reference to the streamer Phantom's habit of demanding food from his fellow streamers and roommates whenever they get food. Not to be confused with the phantom tax. Do not look it up on Urban Dictionary. The term took on a life of its own as a funny but meaningless sequence of syllables to anyone that wasn't in the know beforehand. This is the case for pretty much all the words considered brain rot, where they've been so far removed from their original context, which they made even a modicum of sense in, that in this new context they can only be perceived as meaningless. I believe the shatter point, the pivotal moment in history where words started being violated like this, was the mainstream discovery and explosion of Skibbity Toilet, which, if somehow you don't know, is a series of short source filmmaker videos standing at over 70 episodes long. It has an actual storyline that I'm told is somewhat compelling, with each episode achieving over 20 million views apiece at least. There's also a Michael Bay directed movie on the way. Now, there are for sure words that have been retroactively categorized as brain rot that predate Skibbity's first explosion into mainstream notoriety. For example, the mix of Riz with the name of the Batman villain, the Riddler, into the Rizzler. But the term Skibbity had such a pervasive impact on culture and people saying it just to say it, that I think it having its meaning stripped from it, whether you can believe it ever had one at any point in time, as I see it, was the splash in the pool that rippled out into all other buzzwords similar to it getting the same treatment, where they all got associated with each other only because these words share a similar robbing of identity, now colloquially collected under the brain rot banner. And the synthesis, the ground zero of this calamity taking the form of parody songs, was this particular track, a song itself which has been covered by other people to near death.
Sticking out your yacht for the Rizzler. You're so skibbity. You're so phantom tax. I just wanna be your Sigma.
Now, while researching this video, I couldn't help but think that this all felt a little familiar, like a new evolution of an old friend. Do me a favor, let me play a video for you and tell me if you see what I'm seeing.
Hey, Beater. Yes, Elmo from Sesame Street. Spell whomsive. Holy crap. Follow for a free iPhone 5.
That is from a compilation that is 7 years old. It was at the advent of what would go on to be known as deep-fried memes. It was a genre considered esoteric and unintelligible by the standards of the day, but if you were to post one now, you would be ridiculed as posting something outdated and of the era. You see, I personally don't believe time is a flat circle. I think that history might not repeat, but it sure as hell rhymes. Are some of the greatest moments in history not told through poetry and stanzas? Now, to be clear, I think brain rot is distinctly different from deep-fried memes. Sure, it's just another example of the lasting appeal of XD random humor, which itself draws inspiration from the slapstick humor that was the cornerstone of early 20th century silent films. But deep-fried memes never quite exploded or reached the mainstream appeal that brain rot has. And I think in part that's because the discussion around brain rot is of two minds. A lot of people will cite the terms that supposedly Gen Z uses, but the line of who they are actually talking about is kind of blurred and leaks into the generation below us, Gen Alpha. I've gone over how like these age wars are kind of benign, but bear with me. It reminds me of when millennials were the youngest generation whose names was in the public conscious, and older people began to lump some of the Gen Z folk who were just now coming of age in with the behavior of millennials before the difference in the two became clear. Right now, Gen Z is being taken aim at as the shorthand for youngest age demographic, since a lot of us are just now becoming of age, or are young adults already, when in practice, a large part of the people using brain rot terminology are even younger than us, with none of them old enough to vote. Gen Alpha is effectively getting lumped in with Gen Z as shorthand, even when the stereotypes about the trappings of the two groups is a bit different. This next thing about demonstrates what I'm getting at. The next generation is cooked, bro. Bro is using the TikTok method to teach. While none of us are immune to the attention span sink of TikTok and gameplay commentary, the stereotype around Gen Alpha is that they are uniquely doomed for having this in their formative years to an extent that people say has never existed before. There are also the anecdotal TikToks of teachers saying that their middle school students aren't socialized or educated beyond a 3rd grade level. I won't get too much into that now. Honestly, I have a whole other video planned on the prospects for Generation Alpha and their future, and how the world might be shaping them, but that's outside of the scope of today's video. Instead, what I'm focused on specifically is the perceived effects of brain rot on them versus people my age. The easy to fall into elitist mentality of someone in Gen Z is that we had some personal hand in the brain rot that we consume, i.e. building your For You page brick by brick. That sure, it's absolute sludge content, but it's something that we curated ourselves as a person. And in that, it's only a part of our personality. It's a reflection of who we are, but not the sole medium with which we express ourselves. It can be a social activity where you and your friends may go brain rot for brain rot, exchanging the really stupid shit that you've all come across recently. Maybe you gather in a Discord call, taking turns looking at each other's most recent TikTok likes. You might make remarks or get remarks of, what even is your For You page, man? Or where the hell did you find this shit? Or even maybe something that affirms you of your identity, like, of fucking course you're the one who found this and think it's funny. That your consumption habits are a facet of you as a person, but not the whole. It's a thing that was shaped by who you already were as a person, not the things that make you who you are. And it's very easy to instinctively look down on the younger generations in an act of hubris that every generation does to the one below it, and judge them for not taking so-called brain rot, mind-numbing content in stride as just another thing that is part of you as a human. Instead, the stereotype goes, Gen Alpha is fully consumed by the brain rot that people our age have been able to avoid. Which, for the record, Kwite reference, we have not actually managed. To me, the reality is that we had this same kind of high-octane, low-attention span content when we were younger too. And that's the point. We were younger and dumb. Content was optimized around our own poor attention spans well before anything got like this. The full consequences of this generation's fast-paced content has yet to be seen, but it's not unique. In the same way that people who consumed random XD and troll face memes that came before us are a part of how we experienced internet culture growing up. I think the truth of the matter is that we could go back literal centuries, and this kind of random, surprise, understandable at first glance humor is ever present. We're not in spite of, but because of the incomprehensibility and random XD factor of it all, these comedic instincts will always be with us. We just consume that type of content differently as we age while still being able to enjoy it all the same. We're relatively old now. The content coming out isn't primarily for us, even if we can appreciate it through the looking glass. And personally, I think it's worth celebrating. So to further illustrate this point and give commentary on more specific case studies of brain rot, also just to have some fun, I asked you guys, as well as some of my friends, to send me your brain rot of choice, where what you decide to put forward as your preferred brain rot is in some way a form of self-expression. It can tell us something about you, whatever that may be. So let's get started. Getting this out the way, Nick Nocturne Nightmind, that is his full name, showed his ass as the walking archetype of the predictable Kwite viewer, where when prompted to send me an example of anything that could be conceivably seen as something to make fun of, y'all will always send me my own YouTube channel. Great job! Congrats! You have proven that the evidence writes itself, and that my viewers are just as easy to manipulate as expected. But that's someone I know. Let's try a soul read on a viewer who may know some things about me, but I only see as a $sign who might buy merch if I can lure them into a strong enough parasocial relationship. Silly and Dorius gave us a 2-for-1, where I'd like to go over both for the sake of thoroughness.
English or Spanish? English.
Okay, this is about as 2024 as it gets. The Not Like Us remix that is completely offbeat, hawk-twa post irony, some kind of Cillian Murphy Sigma meme, a Jonkler mention, an ironic version of the very worn-out those who know versus those who don't know meme, where the joke is literally, if you have watched this show that I'm referencing, you will know what the plot of the show is. It's typical. Their second entry is where I really think we get a glimpse of the man behind the profile picture. Silly and Dorius, I have a feeling that if you haven't heard it already, you would greatly enjoy the song Black and Tan by YT and Lancey Foe. I also predict that in a past life you found great enjoyment in browsing r/Arab funny, in a large part because you couldn't understand a single word on there. When a meme in a foreign language shows up on your Twitter timeline with a caption like, I got no idea what this says, but I bet it's funny as fuck, you liked it every time, didn't you? I bet you get especially excited when someone quotes a Japanese tweet saying, whatever you think this says, you're wrong, and the translation translation always gets you cracking up. This is not a judgment of you for doing any of those things. I am also an enjoyer of many of those same behaviors. But depending on how right I am, if someone can track the source material of your preferred brain rot, there's a good chance they can find out something about you as a person and your taste in mimetic comedy that said brain rot is building off of. Okay, we got 4 entries from the parent Kwite superfan with the name Cracker on Twitter. The song Cracker by Kwite, now streaming everywhere. The thing is, I only care about one of their entries because it outs them as a tourist.
Drake?
Yes, Kendrick?
I don't know if I can survive in this rap game alone.
Me neither.
It's just so quiet without you.
I don't want to lose to you.
I have to drop another track.
This is not meta or post-ironic in any sense. This is the source material that would later get co-opted by brain rot into losing all its meaning. If you're in the demographic that this is directed at, it makes complete sense. It's not some unholy marriage of a bunch of different concepts. It's just straight Omegaverse fanfiction conventions and tropes. Cracker, I'm afraid to tell you that you really aren't in this fanfiction game like the rest of us are. This AO3 shit gets serious. Don't let me catch you doing this shit again. This next one is from Horse Clown on Twitter, which is a great name. They said 2 videos, but I really don't care about your second entry, even with how funny it is. You definitely only watched Young Sheldon because you got tricked into liking it through TikTok clips before you realized what it was. It's just the first one you sent me left too big of an impression for the second video to stand up next to it.
As a doctor or
Context, that video is a minute long, and basically the entire runtime is the exact same as what I just showed you. The really loud breaking of glass, crashing downstairs, but the text-to-speech continues audibly even if overpowered under the crashing noises. The story it's telling is coherent even if you can't hear it. Someone might be lying about it, but the story doesn't devolve into gibberish by the end. The thing is, some people might not even hear the full story or know that there's an actual narrative here because the joke of the video itself is understood in the first few seconds. Here's the setup. What is usually just the satisfying background footage to a storytime reading has the audio of that video turned on. And it's so loud that it just screams over whatever story that is usually the focus of these videos. It's funny! Most people have gotten everything they need early on, so they don't need to hear the rest of the story. They don't want to stick around to crashing glass for a whole minute. I'm curious if Horse Clown even realized that this story is about a guy who confessed on his deathbed that he abused his children from a young age in the Drake kind of way. Not saying Drake did that stuff, you just understand what I mean if I describe it like that. But also, that guy was dying because his son was the one who stabbed him. That said, regardless if you knew that, I bet if you found this funny, you watch unironic Reddit story times in your free time. And if TikTok is your main platform of choice, then it's probably the longest form of video you consume on the regular. I can't really dog on that. I can't lie, I listen to those sci-fi story readings over Minecraft parkour whenever I'm shitting or getting ready in the morning. You know, I think I've dunked on enough strangers, so instead, I want to jeopardize some friendships. Let's psychoanalyze some people I know. I think I've got the right guy in mind to start us off, one of my moderators, Insomni. More hoc toi, please.
Could I get 1 hoc tua and spit on the thing?
What the Sigma? You're not even a nonchalant dreadhead like Duke Dennis.
Just because he looks maxes means he gets to double pump your yacht and I don't? Fuck. You know how long I've been joking for this? I didn't even want your hoc tua anyways. It's over.
I'm only going to cover this one in depth, but Insomni submitted 3 separate TikToks, and each one had heavily to do with hoc toi posting or gambling, the latter of which being based as hell. The one we're directly covering, though, reeks of Oblivion NPC, which is right up Insomni's alley, as well as the quality of the footage being right in line with his obsession with CCTV cameras. Trust me, I'm telling you the truth on that one. This motherfucker does not know the name of a single celebrity, which honestly I kinda envy him for. Still, it's a miracle if he knows who someone famous is. He is only in the know about the most explosively popular things, and hoc toi fits that bill. But that's why he's my guy. Even Insomni, with his lack of knowledge of pop culture, is just deranged enough to know that hoc toi is mid and unfunny on its own, but that it also successfully circles back around to being funny when applied in the most unintelligible of contexts. This whole scenario is the most in-character thing he could have sent me. I'm proud of you, buddy. Now, as a send-off for this video, I want to give a detailed analysis on the formatting and history of a submission we received from editor Nuka. Long may he get his cranium eaten away by a head crab that is definitely not on his head.
Well, that's pretty much all there is to tell, kids. The Griffin family history is a rich tapestry. But since we're all gonna die, there's one more secret I feel I have to share with you.
I'm SpongeBob. What?
What? How can you even say that?
Shut up, Chris.
Okay, I can definitely confirm that is not Peter, that is SpongeBob. SpongeBob, the line is shut up Meg, not shut up Chris. You're verbally abusing the wrong child. This one kinda skirts the line of brain rot. It definitely has a certain level of XD random, but it's still a pretty direct subversion on a specific trend, which tells us the genre conventions that Nuka was familiar with ahead of finding the flipping of those expectations funny. If you don't know, the original scene this is taken from is an episode of Family Guy where the titular Griffin family finds themselves drowning and in what they believe to be their last moments. Peter says he has one last confession, where he admits that he doesn't like the Godfather trilogy that much. That's a piece of cinema many would consider must-watch material, a classic, or even a certified banger. The rest of the Griffin family takes great umbrage with this, and they question Peter relentlessly with righteous outrage. If you've ever heard the term, it insists upon itself, that is what Peter described the Godfather as doing. It comes from this clip. The rest of the family finds Peter's arguments to be very lacking with different levels of indignation towards him. The dialogue resonated with many folk because of its superb writing and believability, to the point that this scene has served as a vehicle for many other arguments of similar nature, where people will dub over the argument about the Godfather with their own controversial takes that they may or may not actually hold, whether that be Persona 5,
I did not care for Persona 5.
in which case Peter is right to not like it, Big Chungus,
I do not think Big Chungus is funny.
which I could go either way on, or Across the Spider-Verse,
I did not care for Across the Spider-Verse.
What?
which Peter is completely out of line for besmirching. The subversion of the genre tropes comes in the form of SpongeBob having no argument to make or to be contested on. He is simply there. It's a statement of identity, not of opinion. Chris's anger at SpongeBob is reframed as something primal and personal instead of ideological. Hence SpongeBob's simple response of shut up as opposed to a counter-argument, as there was no argument to counter. To me, what this says about Nuka that plays into what I know of the guy is his enjoyment of media analysis in all its forms it can take, whether it's through listening to a reasoned and well thought out video essay, or a more lighthearted and comedic method, such as the Peter Griffin doesn't like the Godfather meme. He knew enough about that type of joke to find this SpongeBob one funny. That's all I got. I'm gonna wrap this video up here. That card I mentioned should be on screen. If you enjoyed, be sure to drop a like and subscribe with notifications on. Anyways, this has been Kwite, and I'll see you on the other side of the lobotomy.